When you are just reading somebody's message and replying to how lovely the message is, how caring the message is, or even how frustrated the message is, you don't get.
If you could choose, would you rather be a teenager in the 90s or the 2010s, and why?
Today's youngsters, I feel that their interactions or their entertainment, anything, they don't have time to reflect on it.
You know, this kind of constant exposure that we have to people's lives, is it having an impact on how comfortable we are with our actual selves? We carry the world in our pockets. Answers to almost any question, connection to almost anyone, entertainment for all those spare moments. But what has that constant connection done to us? To our attention, to our relationships, our sense of self? Today, my dad and I are going to explore the impact of smartphones and social media on Gen Z's personal development. Have they made us more informed and connected, or have they quietly hindered our ability to grow, focus, and form those meaningful connections and relationships? Welcome to the Gen X Gen Z podcast. I'm your host, Cheyenne, and with me, as always, my father, author and e-commerce entrepreneur. We've been having a lot of these conversations over the years, just the two of us, and we decided that it was about time we opened them up. So, Baba, growing up, I think the biggest generational shift of this topic here is that I grew up with smartphones, I grew up with social media, and you didn't. Our generation, essentially, our environment is global, not just local. We're kind of connected through every means to anyone and at any time. So do you think that growing up with smartphones has fundamentally changed what it actually means to be young?
Of course it has. For example, when we were young, most of our human connection would be at personal level. We'll go out, play in the... I remember we would go every single day just before the sunset to a local park and play the cricket, hockey, or something else. So that wasn't just me, but everyone kids would just go out, hang out, or play or do something with other kids outside of your house. It's a very common saying that when we were growing up, parents would say, please come back home. And now parents are saying, please go out, because kids are just sitting at home playing games or on your smartphone or going through social media scrolls or whatever. So things definitely have changed. So the human connection, because we human are social animals, we have to stay connected with other people. And that fundamental thing completely changed with the coming of smartphone and social media. So the past 11,000 years of human way of living and interacting completely changed between 2004 and 2012. And that has changed the behavior, attitude, and way of seeing the connection between humans. I think today's kids see, because of this interaction is more through social media, the deep connection with each other, that reliance, that trust, and that understanding of somebody else's behavior or who they are, understanding each other deeply. I personally feel that which was there before the social media and when I was growing up is missing out in the current. Of course, you guys can connect to many more people than we could. And as you mentioned, this is global interaction, or even with your classmates, whenever you can send your WhatsApp messages and all that. But that one-to-one personal interaction created very deep connection between people. I feel that now that connection has gone a bit surface level. So you understand each other, that's what's been said, and that it's not as deep anymore, where people rely on each other or trust each other as much or as emotionally involved with each other as in our times.
But you know, that kind of reliance and trust aspect of a friendship or relationship that you're talking about, do you not feel that potentially that was more so accelerated by now states having more control over the things that people would previously rely on in terms of family and friendship, as opposed to technology?
Well, of course, states have taken a bit more of a role, for example, healthcare and other things, especially in developed economies. But in developing economies, those things are still the same. So people, for example, if somebody gets ill, somebody would have to stay with them in the hospital and all that. I think the connection bit, because when you are just reading somebody's message and replying to how lovely the message is, how caring the message is, or even how frustrated the message is, you don't get the right exact response through that message compared to if somebody's just sitting by you and said half of it. Because you have the body language, you can see through their faces, how much they meant, how much they didn't mean. And through that, you create the deeper opinion about the other individual. Whereas now, it's just because of these, of course, people still, the trust kind of thing is still there. People who haven't seen the other side, our way of growing up, wouldn't be able to relate or find a difference. But we can see the difference, that how, for example, our time, the way friends would be really close emotional friends to each other, like brotherly, and you would, if anything goes wrong with your family or life or anything, so they would be completely involved, as emotionally involved in your life. Whereas now it's not, it's just, okay, surface level interaction. So somebody will ask you, if you need me or if you need anything, please let me know, and so forth. So interaction is there, but it's not as deep as it was in our time. And it's not just me saying it. I can see the youngsters, and now the lonely epidemic, they say that today's youth is the loneliest ever humanity has seen. And it is, I was mentioning to somebody the other day that when we would go to a cafe or a restaurant, I can't remember anybody going alone or sitting alone in a cafe or a restaurant. Going out just on your own would be very odd. But now you go in a cafe, restaurant, wherever, so you would see people just with their laptop sitting on their own and doing their thing. That is because people are they're still, of course, connected through their phones and laptops. And even two friends sitting together, they'll be talking to other people on their phones. That has changed in a big way, to answer your question. The way society works, the way interaction works. The smartphone and social media have completely overruled the previous way of interaction.
And I agree with you that that screen is now an emotional barrier for sure. And even through personal experiences, it's something I noticed when going back to Pakistan and seeing older cousins and their friendships. I think maybe because it's more of a developing society, and a lot of them are also a lot older than I am, so they kind of were born in an age where smartphone technology kind of came later than it did for the millennials here. And I notice exactly what you're saying regarding that brotherly kind of familial almost style of friendship people would have. So it is something I have witnessed myself as well. But oftentimes, Baba, when talking about this kind of comparison of smartphones and social media amongst my generation, and when in discussions when we think about your generation and what you guys went through, something that often comes up is it's cool that we are all very much so, like you said, and you can agree with, more connected with each other. But as a result, there's also this kind of, mostly through social media, this constant comparison and pressure as well. There's FOMO, there's kind of internal comparisons and pressures to like people you see on social, like influencers and certain people going on holidays and you're at home. And that leads to this perspective that you lived through a time, 70s, 80s, 90s. People growing up in that era, it might have been a bit more simple for them because they didn't have to deal with those constant comparisons and pressures. So I feel like this question makes most sense to phrase to you having lived through both eras, that if you could choose, would you rather be a teenager in the 90s or the 2010s, and why?
Well, it's a difficult question. Of course, there was value in the personal connection, where if I look at that way, that where we would interact with friends or play together, so that era was a lot better. So we would have a lot of interaction, playing together, and feeling that busyness without this feeling of missing out onto anything, or I have everything but I can't enjoy it, which I sometimes feel people in today's age, I see them sometimes feeling in that way. But of course, in today's time, this ability to connect and to social media, or to be able to kind of contact anybody, and especially the educational aspect of it, where you can access any information, any kind of tools, what kind of subjects you should be studying, or what kind of career you can make for yourself, or so many economic opportunities and career opportunities. So from that point of view, it's definitely better, because what social media has done, that it has given everybody the tool and the ability to stay entertained. So nobody has time, even if they are free and they don't like social media. So they wouldn't have, other people don't have time for them. Whereas in our time, so everybody were not engaged on the social media. And so they had to look for somebody else to spend time and have chit chat. So I think if I have to choose, for interaction purposes, I would choose 90s. And for growth and opportunity perspective, I would choose today's time.
And that, of course, again, it makes sense that we have a lot more opportunities now. People can create careers in their bedroom as well. It's just through we're so kind of externally connected that everything's kind of in the palm of our hands. But because of that constant connection, Baba, this is something we speak about privately. This is something that I speak about with friends, and everyone is on it's on the news media constantly whenever you mention smartphones and social media. And that is that we don't have boredom. Boredom doesn't really exist anymore. As soon as I feel bored, or as soon as I kind of notice nothing's really going on, it's almost a habitual reflex for me to pick up my phone. As soon as like there's kind of a silence, even in a conversation between friends, both of us will pick up our phone at the same time. And oftentimes, when through reading and even speaking to you, it's quite commonly stated that a lot of these really important deep reflections and personal developments are kind of born through boredom because that gives you the time to, self-reflect, self-analyze, amongst other things. So what do you think are those experiences that Gen Z has lost through smartphones and social media that you guys probably had a lot more than we did?
Yes, you're right that when we were young, because there was only one television and sports would happen in the evening when the sun would go down. So most of the time during the day, when it's heat or even cold, time would be spent either you're studying or when you're not studying, if there's nobody around, so you can be just sitting and doing nothing. And there were many times that even I remember I won't be doing anything and parents would go to sleep during the day, siesta they'll do. And we'll just spend time watching things here and there. The important thing is that everybody, because we're going through the same situation, so one cousin would be having the same problem, so he might come to me, or sometime I'll go to other cousin or any other relative or a friend. So time will still get filled in sometimes, but sometimes it'll be quite boring. At the same time, for example, after any interaction, so you went for playing and you came back, or you're just otherwise walking on your own, or you're traveling in a bus, or you are just sitting at home doing nothing, that nothing time was a good time to reflect on all the interactions you had before that, or whether you went to school, or whether you learned anything new, or you read a book, or you had interaction with friends. All those activities had a reflection time. So when you are just on your own, and whether it's a boring time or whatever, but that time will get spent on understanding what is going on in your life and how the previous interaction just happened, how that went, or people would think about it. Because the difference is that now people have a lot of information and a lot of entertainment, but they don't have time to reflect on how that is impacting on their life. I think that particular way of life, where you have an interaction and you have pause time, which is totally you free, that creates a deeper sense of understanding that how things you have seen or interacted with are affecting you as a person. Whereas today's youngsters, I feel that their interactions or their entertainment, anything, they don't have time to reflect on it. They don't have time to understand how it is impacting them, or how their life is related to the events they are observing or they are experiencing. So that is the bigger gap, which doesn't allow them to create that depth of a personality and how to resolve problem, or that critical thinking or understanding of life as a whole, I feel kind of gets hindered in this quick-paced life where you have entertainment all the time, you have time gets passed in one thing or the other, but understanding how that experience is affecting them is getting lost.
And I agree with you, but what kind of practical solution then would you provide to someone living in a technological world surrounded by all of these influences to increase their critical and deep thinking?
For somebody who was, for example, 90s, you asked earlier as well, whether that was, which one, having that much entertainment or killing your boring time and all that is a wonderful idea for somebody who is at 90s, for example, way of living today. But it's when it is too much. So having that understanding that the gap is very important. And I know many wise people, they don't, for example, we deliberately didn't allow all of you kids to have smartphone until the age of 18. And many wise people who even adult, they wouldn't use smartphone all the time or wouldn't kind of scroll through. So set times. So create a balance, how much you want to use your phones and how much you want to use social media if you have a deliberation time in between. And of course, life hasn't completely kind of gone absurd. So there are people, but when we are mentioning these issues, they're only for the people who are using social media too much and trying to fill any free time with social media or scrolling through reels or going on television, Netflix, or other things, binge watching. So it causes problems for them. But people who are getting a lot, because there's a lot of information available now, a lot of knowledge, whatever you want to understand about yourself, about your surroundings, about your community, about the world is available just at a click. And if you can then now allow yourself time to reflect on it, understand it, how it is relating to you, your life, then it is a wonderful time. It's just that how to use that in a balanced way.
And regarding using, obviously, that social media in a balanced way, there's also, I think, a really important topic we need to talk about is identity now, and that change of identity between your generation and my generation. What I mean by that essentially is that I feel obviously throughout life, regardless of what era you're born in, you discover yourself and then you present that discovery to the people around you. And I feel previously in your time, that kind of presentation of yourself was to your locality, it was to your friends, it was to your family, your parents, teachers, etc. Now that presentation has kind of gone up 100-fold. You're presenting through social media, through the kind of, the form of posts and stories. You're getting feedback not just through personal interactions, but through likes, through comments. And I wonder if that's actually really helping us find ourselves, or if it's just kind of making us perform for others. So the question I have to you, Baba, is how do you feel that developing an identity online differs from developing one in a largely offline world?
Well, in offline world, because people would be knowing each other through personal interaction, that was through the word of mouth. So I've heard that person is good or bad, or otherwise, whoever you know in your local geography, those are the people you'll be interacting, or people who see you in that geography. So perception of a person, who he is, the identity they created of themselves or other people saw it, was one, it was real because it was personal interaction, and it wasn't out there all the time either. So of course, when you are going and somebody misunderstood you or something else, so you had time to come and kind of make them understand that's what you meant or something or the other. So identity was kind of slow paced. You will build it over a period of time, and a part of it was inherited, part of it you would make through your work, education, and the type of person you are. But now through social media, especially the people who are active on social media, of course, even today, not everyone is posting or trying to create an identity online. But this particular part is for people who actually actively engage on social media and put themselves out there that this is what they are. One, it is very global, so anybody would know whatever you're saying. And second, it is out there. So there's no kind of going back. Once you portray yourself in a certain way, then that's what you are. And secondly, people sometimes fake it as well. So they curate certain experiences and you would notice many people originally they are something else, and they'll try to kind of put a different image of themselves online. And I know many people who do that. So it can be very fake, and that, I think social media has created that lack of, because everybody, if I know and you know, everybody else knows as well, that people can be fake. And the trust on the social identity of somebody online, I feel is not, and after especially AI has come, is quite weak. It does affect people to understand how somebody is, but still the trust of it is still weak. That's I think all I would say on this.
So, but obviously there are a lot of these kind of false narratives then being portrayed through social media. And a lot of these false narratives, in fact, oddly enough, the most false narratives tend to sometimes be the most influential. It's weird how negative kind of media can often get pushed quite heavily through an algorithm because it's what people tend to respond the most to. And then obviously as a result, that feedback, those likes, those comments, those shares, once you see it on something like that, it's going to influence you as a result as well. There's a lot of young people that get influenced by negative media because they see this is what brings attention, this is what people are valuing. So in this kind of discovery of self then, relative to an offline world where you are able to discover yourself based off your surroundings, based off your real life experiences, like you mentioned. Do you think now, because of all those influences, people are becoming more so who they think others want them to be rather than actually who they want to be?
You know, humans have always been affected by the environment they grew up. So they would, of course, through the system of acceptability or liking or the kind of things they did and they got applauded for by the society, that by parents, peer group, teachers, friends, family, they would see that, okay, this is something they should do more of. So the same thing is happening now. Now people would post something online and whatever gets liked more, they would start doing those type of things. Some people, I would say, not everyone. But this whole idea of doing things for the purpose that others would like you, it's counterproductive to your growth. That's not something, even when the social media wasn't there, people who were kind of pro-growth, who wanted to kind of grow up to be a progressive person or who were seeking wisdom and guidance to how to become a better human being, they were not getting too much influenced by how the surroundings are seeing them or whether they are getting kind of impressed by them or not. The same goes in today's age. So people who are serious, they don't mind whether people like them or not like as much their posts, but they would do the right thing, even at a social media level or online, wherever, whichever way, if they are kind of presenting themselves in a certain way. But there would be people, of course, and they were in the past as well. So to answer your question, I think whether playing into the gallery question, which it is, that whether people are doing things for applauses, it was there before social media, so it is now. There will be people who would play for the gallery before, and there are people now as well. So yeah.
But obviously, I understand that kind of mentality was there of comparison, I guess, is what you're saying. But nowadays, do you not feel that depth and that breadth of comparison has kind of expanded so much? I feel like before, like you said, that influence would be from your locality. Alongside influence, that also self-comparison to others, I guess, would also be within your locality. I'm assuming you'd compare yourselves essentially to your father, to your mother, to your friends, maybe that boy in class that's doing well. Those would be positive comparisons. Whereas now we kind of, without even realizing, subconsciously compare ourselves to thousands of people every day. A simple 5 scrolls takes a few seconds and you'll be comparing yourselves to a celebrity or a random person in the southern hemisphere whilst you're in the northern hemisphere. And it makes me wonder then, this kind of constant exposure that we have to people's lives, is it having an impact on how comfortable we are with our actual selves?
Of course it is. That's a very different but important question. Because in our time, people in our surrounding knew us. Our identity was already kind of inherited and it built over time when we grew up. So we had to align ourselves with our 5 years old self, with our 10 years old self, with our 15 years old self, and then 20 years old self. And then at 25, whatever decisions we will make, so we would know and be mindful of that the surrounding people who know us for those particular times. So we can't abruptly become somebody else at the age of 25 or at the age of 30. Of course, knowledge, experience, understanding would affect and you would change, but you won't completely go berserk and become somebody else. Whereas in today's age, because you have a global audience and of course you have global influence as well, as you have your influence on yourself and what you want to do, and you can idealize anything today. And so as you can become anybody as well. For example, the same 25 years old who had to keep themselves the same way for the surrounding people, but now the same 25 years olds knowing that if my surrounding doesn't accept even this new identity I'm going to create, but the rest of the world will, and there would be, of course, people. So that's how it is affecting whichever you want to become, you can become. And also you can take influence from global influencers. And of course, that is impacting our personalities because desire has multiplied by 1,000. Because before, your exposure was local. You could only desire things what you could see. If somebody has a particular car or somebody has a certain lifestyle or they wear certain clothing, they speak in a certain way. So that's what all your exposure was, or from television. Now you scroll through thousands and millions of people you can access to. And that becomes the standard. So you have, okay, and especially if people who follow too much, so their standard keeps changing because somebody else would become even more appealing than the previous ones, and somebody else will become more appealing. And that, of course, create a bit of unpleasant or unkind of fulfilling feeling. Because, okay, you're 15 or 20, you thought I would love it if I become this kind of whatever role models you had. And normally people followed role models and they became similar people or of that standard people, and they felt satisfied with it. But now people have tens or hundreds of role models online, and then role models keep changing as well because there's so many other people keep coming, and that satisfaction that I have become this, whatever I wanted to achieve, I think that has kind of questioned as well, because your goalposts keep changing because of your access to so many desires and aspirations around the globe.
So, Baba, regarding now what we've spoken about these social media influences and also that kind of comfortability of oneself within it as well, but through comparison, because of the things that you're seeing on Reels, TikToks, etc. But another thing also that I want to get into is the impact of feedback from social media. So these likes, these shares, these comments. We've looked at it from the perspective of how that influences what you want to do and who you want to be. But I kind of want to go deeper into the sense of self that creates as well. And what I mean by that is a lot of the time I've noticed there will be me, myself personally, I don't really post a lot on social media. If I do, it'll be on a story, so it'll be like a temporary post. But a lot of my friends, they'll have whole pages, about 100 odd posts over the past 10 years. And it's something that they really get into curating, and they really like choosing the right photos for their grids and making their overall page look nice as a result as well. And this is for personal aspirations, not just for brands and businesses. But there'll be times within discussion that I'll notice someone's a bit down. I'll be like, is everything okay? And they'll be like, yeah, I just didn't get enough likes on that post, or I didn't get enough comments as I expected, or maybe the feedback wasn't there. And it makes me wonder then, can a strong sense of self still develop when so much feedback comes from these kind of arbitrary things like views and comments?
Of course, we humans always have been dependent on how we are perceived by others for any kind of action we have taken or any achievements we have made, or in any of how our identity has been seen by others. When there was no social media, so people would still see and compare and get happier if more people like them, or if they kind of look up to them and see their achievements in a good light, or the way of life or their style of life. This comes from hunter-gatherers till now. I mean, even hunter-gatherers, the hunters were liked more than the gatherers. And when even the society started kind of building as a community, so there were, of course, community leaders and these regional leaders and then state leaders. And so people with better personality, better way, so people would like them more. And so this kind of need to be praised was always there, and the social media has tapped in their business model in a way that they tap into this human need of getting liked so that they can keep kind of seek attention of others, and whoever gives attention. So that's how the whole business of social media works. And that is a real human psychology. But whether that has changed anything now than compared to before, what it is that before it would be delayed gratification. So you will do something over a period of time and you would get liked for it. Or whoever will meet you, they would say, okay, you have done well in this particular thing, you have a good marks, or okay, you have been to that particular place, how was it? And then you'll tell a story if you have traveled this place or that. But now, so you'll just post your photos and see how your people who know you or your friends react. And you will get disappointed. People do get disappointed if people don't like them. And if they like more, so they'll get happier with it. This is coming from the past. It's nothing new, but it is just the gratification now they want is quick. So that way has changed, and people get frustrated very quickly when something is not working for them. And that can create certain kind of mindset or anxiety or frustration. And because we might discuss further, if you have those type of questions, how social media is affecting people to become more anxious and how anxiety is coming in. And a lot of it is to do with this delayed and quick gratification model. And if you notice all the religions and philosophies, they are built on the basis of delayed gratification, and that's a kind of very deep sense in all the philosophies and religions, that quick gratification, seeking quick gratification is not good for human beings' well-being or their contentment and comfort deeper inside and for their fulfillment. And this part actually affects that side of things, and that's why all the anxiety and unhappiness kind of slowly seeps into people's life.
And one of those things, obviously, and it's something we've touched upon regarding that instant gratification, is that as soon as boredom kicks in, we kind of refocus our attention to our phones, to social media. There's something to keep kind of boredom and that, I guess, lack of just emptiness away. And what that has often caused a lot of the time is lack of focus as a result, because we're so used to not kind of just sitting down in silence. We need something constantly kind of entertaining us. It's something I noticed massively while studying throughout university, even in personal time, that sometimes sitting down and kind of reading a large portion of text, it can often be difficult to even get through one paragraph when you're so hooked to what's going on online through your phone. But at the same time, it's kind of a weird paradox that paragraph, that exact same paragraph, is now so easily accessible to me as well. The information and kind of the more niche and exact information I want is just a couple clicks away. So it's a weird ground where oftentimes I wonder, have smartphones actually improved our minds by giving us instant access to any and all kinds of information we want and need? Or has it weakened our minds by reducing that ability to focus?
Well, of course, internet and smartphones have given access to information in a big way and knowledge. So you can access any research papers, newspapers, books, any topic you have, so you can get it done in a click of a button. Whereas we used to go to libraries or newspapers and physically go through them, or finding that information was quite time consuming. And so access to information and knowledge is, of course, wonderful. That social media and current time wins over it. Whether how, and then the focus of mind and how much time people give to that is personal dependent. People who can give time to all the information available to them and stay focused and keep the social media balance, as we mentioned earlier, they are fine. They are at an advantage in the current environment. Because I know research used to be hard. Finding information or understanding a particular way or finding data on it, even up till 2010-11, it was quite difficult, which it has gone far easier in the recent years, and which is quite helpful. So you can analyze things much easily compared to before. And of course, that increases wisdom and your understanding of the world and understanding of particular areas where people want to research on. But at the same time, people who can't balance their attention on social, or for example, the scrolling or any kind of notification will pump up, or any phone or messages. So that's at a personal level how well they are balancing this part of the equation. But as long as people balance it, I think this side has improved the access to knowledge and understanding. But if you only get information through scrolling, or say for example, somebody who's a knowledge seeker and all the time is trying to get a certain information through the research side, through reading articles, through papers, and also through videos, through shorts, through reels on the same topic. Because now there's so much available. In olden times, once you'll get all the information, you'll synthesize it, you try to make sense of it, how it relates to your particular thing. And you need, of course, time and focus on it just to analyze it. But sometimes people have all the information, but they don't spend time to analyze it. And if he doesn't spend all that time analyzing now all the information is there, but converting it into knowledge needs and wisdom would need him time to analyze and make sense of it, that how it relates to his project or his self or whatever way they are seeking the information for. I think the current time wins on information and knowledge, but it loses on individual focus and their understanding how that knowledge and information links, because of lack of focus, to their particular way of life or whichever reason they are gathering that information.
So Just to kind of clarify as well, then, because when you kind of gave that research example, it made me kind of recognize that a lot of the times, even when speaking to friends and to elders as well, people like, especially from like people from an older generation, they're quite impressed by how people within my generation are quite aware of current events and kind of things that are going on in the world. We are very informed, but I feel like you're saying there's a difference between actually being informed and actually being knowledgeable, if I'm correct.
Yes, because having so much information through news and all that is just information. And going through deeply to understand them, how they impact on the world or your surrounding or yourself or a country or a community, that is knowledge. In earlier times, as I mentioned, any interaction, you'll have interaction with your friends or your school teachers or whoever, then you'll have a free time in between. So there's no interaction even when you're traveling, so you're just traveling on your own or with somebody, but you're not going through your phone, or you're walking, so you're not going through your phone. So you had that free time to reflect on the information. Whereas now people, especially when it comes to this type of thing, they get everybody is well informed on things, whatever topic, whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's wars. Getting information is not a problem, but it's just making sense of it that kind of converts into knowledge and wisdom. And that conversion, some people are good at. Whoever is good at it, it's a lovely time for them. The ones who are not good at it, it's just the information alone doesn't, of course, help as much as once you convert that into knowledge and wisdom.
And one cool fact that I kind of want to get in quickly that I read when reading this topic as well is that regarding focus, I think this is quite interesting that apparently a decade ago they did a research on the attention span of individuals on a screen, and it was 2.5 minutes. And now that's gone today to 45 seconds. So it is a very massive decrease, and it kind of bolsters that point that you're making of critical thinking requires focus as well, of course, and turning that information into proper knowledge. So, Baba, obviously, before we kind of put a pinpoint in it when talking about delayed versus instant gratification, and that kind of being the crux of this problem, not just physically, but also mentally, is something that's impacting the younger generation, my generation. It's impacting their mental health. So, obviously, through social media and through smartphones, there's been an increase in awareness of mental health problems. But at the same time, awareness is one thing, but you also recognize a lot more people are having a lot more anxiety and a lot more kind of fears as they were previously, which makes me wonder, why have these issues of anxiety and mental health concerns become such a prominent issue in younger generations? And is this maybe a perception I have, or is this maybe something that was even prevalent in your times as well?
There's an element of it which people express that because of social media, the knowledge that people have mental health has become more accessible. So people can come on social media and say that they have anxiety, and so more people would know about it. But my personal view is that it is much more than that, because social media has changed the way of life, where the human psychology, which flourished on personal interaction and needed it, now shifted in the new way of life on more individualism, and people kind of interaction has gone more on through social media. And second is that the social media, the way it works, your screen time, there is a kind of machine you're working on and going through scrolling your eyes and wherever, that isn't where we human are, or kind of historically used to of. And I remember I've seen even one of your siblings, they would react on certain things in a very different way. And for example, Coke, if it's taken more, so they will become overly hyper. The same would go for the screen time. And other people have witnessed a similar thing, that social media impacts on your anxiousness and on your kind of reactions in a very subtle way. And of course, it has reduced your critical thinking ability, it has reduced your memory, your sleep time has changed, and your focus have changed. So all this research has been done, especially because, the social media has come in between 2004 and 2012. And it was the first generation who was using it at that level. And there was no practical research done, and could not be done because it was only too early. And now, since 2022 till now, OECD and other organizations have done research. And they found that it has impacted all kind of human experience, whether it's memory, critical thinking, focus, comparing, whether there's all these psychological elements of human way of thinking are being disturbed through social media, and that's why it is causing anxiety, or it is causing anxiety in people who are overusing it. Not everyone. People are keeping the balance and using it for the positive purposes, for gaining knowledge, seeking opportunities. Of course, it has added all that aspect to life. But people who are overusing it, it does impact their psychological health.
But on the pro side, could you not argue that one of the kind of major benefits, and I don't know if this kind of outweighs those cons, is that people are now kind of more aware of these mental health issues because stories and studies are kind of being constantly shared online through social media, even through the form of personal reflections as well as research. And on top of that, there's also kind of a lot more push and drive towards seeking help when it comes to mental health issues. People like online influencers speaking about their struggles really pushes people to realize that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, I understand. Of course, there are other even tools available online which help in mental health, and people can access, for example, certain professionals through it, and then they can call you and interact with you. But Shayan, we human are very different type of creatures. When it comes to our psychology, it needs personal interaction, especially if something has gone wrong. I even notice people when they try to speak with healthcare professionals over a phone for certain kind of mental health issue or for therapy purposes, the results are not promising, and especially with online tools and all that, because this is a very deep issue. When somebody's not feeling good enough, or feeling anxious, or feeling, they need to be heard and understood at a personal level. Of course, for awareness, social media is wonderful, but for resolving the problems, I would say is the society need to be shaped in a way where personal interaction is promoted, so as both social media and personal interactions go hand in hand. For example, now schools are recognizing this. UK, Australia, they have banned smartphones and social media for teenagers, and I think that will go even in further ages. It's not helpful that if your only way of interaction is through social media or through smartphones. So I think for mental health purposes, moving forward, world has to, and the states have to encourage personal interaction along with social media, and to create a balance between, for human experience to be both, not just only through social media.
So, but one thing I've noticed a lot now when scrolling through social media, especially on apps like Twitter, also obviously now known as X, I'll be scrolling through a post and it'll make me very happy. It'll kind of bring a lot of joy within me. And then the post just below it will kind of start inducing a lot of sadness or even more extreme negative emotions like anger. And it makes me wonder, that extreme pendulum shift that we get through social media is very common. There'll be things that make you laugh, there'll be things that make you cry. I feel like that isn't having a very positive impact on our brains. So, can social media, despite showing good stuff, I guess, then simultaneously improve but also damage mental health?
Of course, it can damage, as we just mentioned, that there's all sort of information, and if it's not been used in a balanced way, and people wouldn't control their timing on it, or go through all other type of content, which is especially the type of content which is affecting their mental health. And sometimes that kind of content becomes more appealing, especially for youngsters. That, of course, affect your mental health, your ability to focus, critical thinking, and all the other kind of aspect of life. But the trouble is that, getting rid of social media on its own, where society stands today, won't solve the problem, because you have to solve the problem of society talking to each other at personal level. States have to create common places, create certain environments where people can interact. It's a difficult one, but I think for the long run, states would have to create certain ways where people can go not completely backwards, but to a place where both social media and normal personal connection can thrive simultaneously.
That kind of coexistence, and that is something that you kind of, even talking about the laws that now have been recently introduced by UK, Australia previously, I guess they are trying to have a proactive approach to all of it. further regarding this impact of mental health through social media. I think this is something that's prevalent in the concepts of and minds of men, but also more importantly and specifically in the minds of women. And what I'm referring to is that through social media, these beauty standards that have been created, we kind of see these curated lives every day. We see someone living a really kind of, when they're on holiday, you might have gone to the same place, but they're doing activities that are far better than the ones you achieved. And then on the other side, there'll be someone wearing a certain dress or have a certain figure that you feel like you want, but technically sometimes it's quite impossible because it's used things like Photoshop or AI to enhance certain aspects or make certain parts look smaller or bigger, etc. So it makes me wonder, this constant scrolling, especially at a young age, when these kind of beauty standards or these standards of what happiness looks like and what contentment looks like can really easily be molded in a young person's mind. Do you think that platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, do they expose people to very unrealistic standards of success, beauty, and happiness?
It does, as we mentioned earlier, because in our times, you were exposed, your desire was limited to the things you would see in your local geography. Or then the TV came in and then you would watch a TV program or something, and which was very limited. So people wouldn't kind of aspire or seek to become something which is in a different city or a different country. But now your access to inspiration is global. So your desire becomes global, influenced by global curated experiences, as you mentioned. Somebody, I think there is a research done by Harvard where they have said that the fulfillment or happiness is equal to what you have divided by what you desire. If your desires go down, then happiness would go automatic. So you don't need to increase what you have, but you need to decrease your desires. And that's the old philosophy as well. So, and religions and old philosophies always encourage people to. So what the difference social media has made, it has increased desire too much, whether it's desire for beauty, desire for a certain kind of experience, desires certain things to have through whatever people get access to. And that has created this unfulfillment and unhappy state of people, because even if they wanted to reach something, the initial role model they made at a local level or through social media, and because there's so many of them, even if they reached that one through their successes, through their education or whatever they set out to do in their lives, even if they succeeded in it, once they'll start seeing other people having even a bigger car or a bigger house or a beautiful body or other improved experiences, so the desire, more desires will come in and you would want to have more things. So I think that is definitely a big part where the anxiousness or lack of fulfillment is coming from. And when people are all the time unhappy or uncertain, or kind of whether they have reached the goals or not, which they want, that creates anxiety and of course affect the mental health and that calmness which we seek in our human life.
In our daily lives, yeah. And that makes complete sense, yep. Thank you for that, Baba. So far we have explored how smartphones essentially reshape our identity, how they affect our attention spans and the impacts they're having on our mental health. But there's a few more dimensions that we have left to explore. How technology affects our resilience, our character, our ability to grow as human beings, how it's affecting and impacting the relationships we have with one another, and also the opportunities we have that are presented to us. Hopefully, we'll explore those further in part 2 of this podcast. Thank you so much for listening.